All right, guys. New
Aloha.
Year's Bash.
New
Come on.
year. Let's get it. Out with the old, in with the new. Well, it's only 6:30 in the evening here, so it's still got quite a ways to go. But having said that, let me make a preemptive apology here. Folks in this valley love their aerial fireworks. Okay. So although it's like 6 hours early, they've already been setting them off. So if you hear any loud booms or bangs behind me, I apologize for that. I may jump a time or two, but that's what's going on.
They're setting them off here too already.
Yep. The aerial fireworks are still illegal here, but they launch them off anyway. And there are so many that the law enforcement is just overwhelmed. I mean, if they happen to be driving down a residential road when somebody lights one off, they'll stop. But I mean, they can't just go chasing around every boom they see in the sky.
Yeah.
So,
well, they're going hog wild. There's people shooting things off. You probably can't hear them, but they've been doing that all afternoon.
Yeah.
And the way we celebrate it here,
mm-hmm.
and I say that in the loosest of terms, because when I say and the way I'm saying just locally here in Florida or in Miami.
Yeah.
You'll have the typical explosions, but then you'll have your enclaves of conga drums. And then you'll hear one close by and you're like, oh crap. And then you'll hear another one. And by the way, of course, that's an interesting thing to listen to and stuff. But like in the context of like Sweetwater and the whole thing, it gets old very fast. And then you'll hear another one start up, another conga thing. And it'll be everywhere, dude. And then
that's actually kind of cool. I got no problem with that. That's actually kind of cool.
Okay, well,
but I've not lived it, so it's easy for me to say so. But that actually sounds kind of cool.
Oh yeah. You're driving up and down, and you're like, it's kind of like some sort of like I watched Mutiny on the Bounty the other, and they stopped in I guess one of those island countries in the middle in the Pacific somewhere because they were
Tahiti for sure.
It was Tahiti, yeah. And the tribal people were island people. Well, it's no different here. You've got that very Caribbean thing going on, and yeah, plus fireworks. That's the story.
That actually sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well,
about the only place that I've ever had any kind of experience like that was in Hawaii, but it wasn't so much. I mean, Samoans love their parties and they love to have their fun. And when they have a party, they don't half step it, man. They go all out. When a Samoan family is having a party. But in Hawaii, there are a few times a year where fireworks are legal. And by that, I mean like firecrackers and stuff. They're not, they do a little bit of aerial fireworks, but it's mainly firecrackers.
Okay.
And New Year's, 4th of July, Chinese New Year, and there are a couple of other holidays there where those fireworks are legal and they're sold.
Okay.
And I mean the morning of, you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and they're already going. And it's nothing but firecrackers going off in the distance. And these people have it down to a science. For like 2 weeks before that holiday, you cannot steal a galvanized trash can. Because they get these trash cans and they buy coils of firecrackers and they just put them in the trash can and light them off. So the trash can amplifies the sound and it collects up all the papers and stuff. And if it catches on fire, you throw the lid on it. So it's not like you're chasing around bits of burning paper or anything, but the whole island smells like burned fireworks for about 2 days. And I mean, there was the guy made the newspaper, a guy up about maybe 2 miles away from us in the town just off of the airfield. He lit off 1 million firecrackers
No,
over the
geez.
course of that 24-hour cycle. He
I would
bought
not
and
like
he
that
lit
guy.
off 1 million firecrackers. But it was the whole island doing that. And you had these little enclaves of parties going on here and there. And you knew when it was the Samoans because, I mean, they had bands, they had the whole thing going on. And just an absolute blast. It was really something to experience. It was really fun.
It's whenever you go into a different place, like and see their celebrations.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're in it, when you're in your sort of like I guess enclave of of cultural whatever, you're kind of used to it, so you're like, oh, whatever. But it's funny for me to say that I've always the way I don't know, I've always looked at things as an observer, which we all are anyhow, but I've always gone into situations and I've felt a little bit out in it and then at the same time not of it.
Yeah.
And outside of it, observing the what it is that's going on and what the ramification. It's so I can't just leave well enough alone. Even in that kind of a situation, I have to look at it. It just comes natural from an outside observer thing. So, like, I've been in, like, say, California and seen, like, the Mexican festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And you're taking it in, but at the same time, you're looking at this.
Yeah.
Just like the over here with the Cuban festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ritualistic. Here's my issue with it, and I'll just see what you have to say about this, but I don't know that they've thought it through. In other words, it's like ancient times, somebody brought the sacred rock stone with hair on it, and you must rub it. And then 10 generations pass, and nobody remembers why that first person brought it. It could have been some drunk guy from the village next door, and he set it on the center rock in the courtyard, and it stayed there. And people do things without thinking why it is that they do it. And so I see these people going, and I'm like, I understand it on the musical level, gotcha, but like the traditional thing without knowing the purpose of it and why you're doing it, there's something about that.
But we do that. Every culture does that. We step further and further and further away from the meaning of what the whole holiday and the celebration is about. I would venture to say 75% of the U.S. doesn't know what Thanksgiving is actually supposed to be about.
It's about turkey, man.
Yeah, about 50% don't know what Christmas is actually about. Why do we celebrate Veterans Day or Memorial Day or pick a holiday? All we know is July 4th, we light fireworks. And some people can tell you, yeah, that's the day we celebrate our independence from Britain. But what do the fireworks signify? Why fireworks? Why not something else? Why not loud bands or something like that? What do they mean? And so I can't fault any culture for basically following along, because you don't have any kids. So I can only go back to me trying to explain why we were lighting fireworks and what those sparklers meant when talking to my kids. So, what it's supposed to signify, what it's supposed to represent. And so it has a little bit of meaning to them, but I don't know about the next door neighbors or anybody else in this town. Did they explain it to their kids? Probably not. This is a day Daddy gets to get drunk. We barbecue and light fireworks. Okay, great.
Well, you put worst case scenario, you put 2 and 2 together from textbooks in school, and I've got a sneeze coming on.
Oh,
did I block it just in time?
You were quick on the mute button, my friend. That was great.
I was looking with my mouse and I couldn't see where the actual. I was like, oh, boom, and I got it. Dude, that was wild. That was a wild sneeze. Yeah, at worst case scenario, people put two and two together, but um, you're right as far as like cultures, everybody does it and stuff,
Yeah.
but there's meanings behind these ritualistic things that we do
Sure.
that a lot of us might or might not recognize or understand the origin of, but they do have an origin.
Yeah.
There's a reason for them.
Sure.
You
But
know.
the further we get away from the origin, the less likely it is that that origin is going to be spread down to the next generations. Fewer and fewer generations realize that 4th of July used to be celebrated completely differently. It was an all-day thing, and it was civically minded. I mean, the whole town got together at a downtown park or someplace close by, and it was a whole big thing. There were bands, there were games for kids and adults, there were horse races and big huge cookouts and what have you. It was an all-day thing, and that ended at night with fireworks. And a lot of times the fireworks displays were pretty small because they couldn't afford them, and they were basically imported. So you had guys shooting off the ceremonial cannons and what have you, and that was your fireworks.
The because of the internet and the way we consume information now, I remember as a kid we used to get up in the morning and watch the parade. I guess it's Christmas. Is it Christmas morning?
Yeah,
we'd watch the parade, and then they televised the parades. And since there was no extracurricular activity other than going outside and playing or reading comic books, you'd turn on the TV and watch that, and the family'd sit and watch a little bit, and I could tell you that this year it didn't even cross my mind.
yeah.
Did
I
it?
haven't watched the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in so many years. It's not even funny. I
You're
mean,
such a
I
cultural
I
infant.
watched it when I was a kid, and I watched it when my kids were young. But that's to me is mainly a kids thing. Now parades, remember, I've got a wife who's a bagpiper. So, and walking through the house, I'm a keen observer myself. She's got her pipes out. It's her New Year's tradition ever since she became a piper, to at midnight, while everybody else is doing the fireworks thing, she goes outside in the front yard, walks back and forth, and plays Old Lang Syne.
Nice.
So on the pipes. So she contributes to the noise pollution as well. But to me now, parades, because she is a piper, I'm used to being in parades and not watching parades. So to stand back and watch a parade go by, to me, there's really no interest, because a parade to me means work.
Yeah.
I'm the guy driving the car and shuttling people back and forth and everything, and I'm shooting video of certain sets that the band is playing, certain tunes that they're playing, so that the pipe major can yell at who needs to step it up or who needs to slow it down or whatever. So the parades just kind of come and go to me anymore. It's not real. I don't know. I don't think I've sat back and watched a parade since my kids were like 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that.
I agree with Steve if he's saying that we need video footage of Linda.
Oh, the parades.
Yeah.
I post video right along when I can remember. Now they when I can remember to shoot video. The last couple of years I've been on barbecue duty when we have one big parade here that they do every year. It's called Boatniks. It's done in Grants Pass, about 30 miles away from us. And it's done on the river. They have jet boat races.
Okay.
And there's a big old huge thing. It's a week-long thing. They set up a carnival in this big park, and they have individual heat races, I mean, of all classes of boats. And it's basically...
Oh,
and we're talking the big, powerful, expensive.
did you drop and then came back up?
Looked like we both did.
Oh,
but I
really?
think we're back.
That's kind of weird. Really?
Yeah, because both of us reloaded. It looked like that was
Oh,
odd.
I saw you drop and I stayed, and then you came back up on.
Okay, it must have been on my end. Okay. Um. Okay, Steve is saying, I mean her midnight New Year's. That's going to depend on her. She is the final arbiter of what gets posted and what doesn't. Meaning she's her own worst critic. If she isn't dressed right, or if she isn't doesn't think she performed well enough, no video will appear. Maybe a picture, but we'll see. Um, yeah, so these boat races go off and everything, and they have a huge parade, and her band is always right up front, right behind the flag and the color guard. So I film them and I follow along with them, and then when we get to the end, that's it. And we go down to the park because they're going to play down there a little bit. Then we have lunch. They play a little bit more. Then we go up to one of the band members' house for a big barbecue when that's done and over with. Well, the last few years I've been on barbecue duty, so I haven't even gone down to watch the parade or any of that kind of stuff. So, it's just one of those things, but it's fine. It's pipe band life. We have fun with it.
Cool.
So, but yeah, it's a blast. And it's the same thing with competitions and what have you. The bands are getting together and they're practicing and they're tuning up and warming up and what have you. And I'm running back and forth and grabbing water and fetching and carrying. It's fine. It's great.
Nice.
So, but when it comes to her solo performances out in the yard, we'll see. You got to remember it's midnight and I don't exactly have good lighting out there. So we'll see. Maybe I can get some video. Maybe I won't, but no promises. Okay.
Well, what you could do, this just popped into my. You could put a 24-hour cam on that sofa, that recliner, and just title the video, because a lot of people are doing 24-hour cams, and you just title the video something like, "Let's see if somebody else comes and takes the seat."
Well, I'm thinking about getting cameras, but not on that chair. We're talking out in the front and back yards, but
I'm totally down with that.
It hasn't come to that. I mean, that's the first. We've been here 7 years, and that was the first trouble we've ever had.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty lax about stuff. It's a very small town, and I mean, Linda's got a bicycle out here that's been out unlocked for 7 years, and nobody's touched it. We've never had anything pilfered.
Well, even if the guy that was drunk on your couch, even if he wanted to, he couldn't get on that bike to save his life. He was so tore up that he would not have made it.
I don't think he would have found it. So.
Yeah, for you guys that have not, you should go back and check out episode.
I'm trying to remember which one it was. I don't remember which episode it was.
Well, this was This is your favorite episode. It's an episode.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Anyways, for those listening, finding this, you have to listen to this episode because it's mind blowing.
Episode 69, Things That Go Drunk in the Night.
Yeah, a guy. It's just. I'm going to spoil a little bit. It doesn't matter. A guy actually, Mark and Linda, they're just fast asleep, and Mark decides to go get something to drink or whatever in the kitchen, and he all of a sudden there's a guy snoring on his couch, man, and it's like he's like, what did I just? And it just goes crazy from there. So you have to check out episode 69. I mean, even though I said that, it holds no candle to how it unravels. It's just you just have to watch. Or listen, I'm sorry.
He was actually in Linda's recliner, which was even worse than him actually being in the house. I mean, that was the final insult.
No. But the awesome thing, you have to understand. You have to understand what I love about that story the most, and honestly, it does rival.
Adam Smasher,
but I still like Adam Smasher more, but it does rival it. You were right. What I like about this story so much is the fact that you understand a man wakes up in the middle of the night in his kingdom, in his domain, This is what I love about it. And he's quite, the barbarian at home, and he's about to walk towards the area that they keep, refreshments and such. And he's walking, and he's sprayed the area with his scent. So it's his.
Well, not exactly, but go ahead.
But my point is, even though I'm exaggerating, the last thing on this guy's mind in his kingdom, in his walk, is that there's gonna be some phenomenon, some satellite dish that just landed on your frickin' front porch, parked in your driveway, in your territory, and his double take with the neck jerk to try to figure out what the heck is. I'm sorry, it is wonderfully exquisite to listen to this episode. So episode 69 is a trip.
Absolute befuddlement. Absolute. Did I really just see that? No.
And how about the chills? Well, how about the chills that start to occur once you realize? No,
it was all situational too, man. It was all situational.
There's no need to be. Look, there's no need to go Clint Eastwood on us right now. You had to for a moment there say, "Holy smoke!"
Oh yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no denying that, and there ain't no going Clint Eastwood.
I'm sorry because that you're inside the gated domain of your world. Yeah. And then
believe me, if I'd have walked out of there and there would have been movement, it wouldn't have been the calm WTF moment that it was. It would have been immediate reaction. So, it's a completely different situation.
Oh no, you could imagine Mark in his suburbia night robe.
Well, it's not like I had on a night hat walking with a candle, going to the hand pump for a galvanized bucket of water.
Yes, that's how I want to think of it, with a little hand candle and like slippers, and like a pipe.
Yeah, I'm not Wee Willie Winky,
It's all too much to just, and so it's an awesome episode. So I totally.
Well, we basically have recapped it here for about the last 10 minutes, but do check it out. It's fun.
Yeah,
you can check it out by going over to trampledunderfootpodcast.com and hit that Wayback Machine link and go back and look for episode 69. And I'll also mention that trampledunderfoot.com is sponsored by Harneal Media. Mm-hmm. Steve Nealon out here in the live YouTube chat. Hit him up, and he can take care of if you're thinking about a website, web store, anything of that nature. And he does an excellent job.
Yeah, he'll set you up with a website, web store, etc. And it's a more what you would call personalized scenario for you, so you don't have to have the pressure, the detached. He'll take care of your needs and stuff at great prices.
Usually before you need him, he's got it taken care of. So at least that's been my experience anyway.
So Mark, I guess before we get into the bid, if we can, if you want to, any takeaways from this past year?
Oh, several. Number one, lock your doors.
That one was just waiting for me right there.
Lock your doors and double check them. Make sure, turn off the furnace so you don't have to get up at 11 o'clock or 1 in the morning. And
you could have slept through the whole thing.
And let's see. Well, a lot has happened over the year. My wife had knee replacement surgery. She's doing very well. She's doing too much, basically, is what she's doing. And, even the physical therapist had to tell her, slow down, calm down. You're not going to get up to 100% this week. Don't stop trying, but she's doing very well. Mm-hmm. And, just all in all, things have grown enough to where that I think I'm finally going to be able to break ground on a new shop next year. Hopefully this coming spring, I'll have some coins saved up And there's going to be some bigger things coming. And all of that started with everything that's gone on this year. And I'm really in a good place right now, and I'm real grateful for everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And having fun doing the podcast, doing the YouTube thing, just doing our thing here. And just, you know I'm in a situation, I'm retired, and I'm in a situation to where I can turn my hobby into a source of income. But more than that, I can do what I've wanted to do forever. I mean, starting as a young kid with getting my first movie camera when I was 7 or 8 years old, I wanted to be a cinematographer. I wanted to make movies, make video. I didn't so much want to be in front of the camera. I wanted to be behind the camera and do all the photography and do the editing. And now I'm in a place to where in my retirement, I'm doing that. I'm not using a Super 8 camera anymore. I'm using software and digital video, but it's doing the same thing. So I finally got to do what I wanted to do when I grow up.
You're
And
also you're also you were interested in radio at some point,
oh yeah,
and you're in a way podcasting is kind
yeah.
of that in a way too.
It is, and I didn't actually, you know what, Eloy, I didn't even realize that until just now when you said it.
Oh,
I
really?
didn't even realize that. You're absolutely right. So
There's
thank
no
you to
way.
you for making all this go on. You're the one with the connections and had the way to go. And just thank you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll tell you, so this has been a great ride. This show has been really awesome, and we do it really well. And the funny thing is, I'm always surprised how we can play off of each other and really instinctually. It's a weird thing, but we'll get into a conversation and we just have the right amount, sometimes more than the right amount of information back and forth to continue a conversation on to the strangest of destinations.
Yeah.
And it really is a thrill. It's kind of an art how we do this. There's actually, in my belief, there's an art to the way we do this, not consciously, but
Yeah.
we actually go back and forth on the show in a very incredible way.
Well, I think a lot of that comes with personalities getting along, having similar personalities. And to me, I mean, we do this all the time in Google Hangouts and what have you,
Yep.
except in a Google Hangout, there's up to, 9 or 10 of us, and as few as two, and as many as whoever happens to be in there. So we're comfortable sitting in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, and talking back and forth with one another and playing off one another. If we want to bust on one guy and, bust his chops and give him a hard time, he gets tag teamed, and that's all there is to it.
And it's
So
usually Patrick's.
and it's usually Patrick. Hi, Patrick, if you're out there, and hi, Patrick, even if you ain't. So it's just the ability to kind of pick up on that, because we've been doing that for a few years now. I mean, you, me, Steve, Javi, just go down the list. Doc, JP, everybody. We've been doing that for several
Portal.
years. So David over at Portal Woodworks. It's become almost second nature, and you get inside somebody's head that way, and you start figuring out which direction they're going, and it can lead to some interesting destinations that you didn't think you were going to get to. Some good, some not so good, but we get there one way or another, and I think that's half of the fun of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing how people interact and the ability to keep that tape rolling with active conversation in between. There's an art to the whole thing, but not that alone. There has to be content to boot. And so if I go on for a little bit enough, I know that Mark is already ready with a plethora of stuff that he could come in and just land. Now, sometimes we do screw up and we'll have a little, skip here and there, but
sure. And other times we'll get off into a subject where we didn't know we were going to go. And it's that rabbit hole that you have to dive down, and off we go. And we don't know when we're going to come back.
Yeah.
So things get set to the side, and yep, there's Patrick. Hi, Patrick.
Yep. There you are.
Say his name 3 times, and here he shows.
Yep. Rumpelstiltskin, right?
No, Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, that's half of the fun of it, man. I think it's a lot of people say that it's not the destination, it's the journey. And I generally speaking I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but in the case of this type of a situation, the podcast, yeah, it is the journey. I mean, the destination is the final edit, but that's going to happen whether we have fun or not. So,
well, one thing that I've had with our podcast that I've thought of is like our last podcast, which was, I guess, the Christmas special, right? The one that came out.
Yeah.
So what I thought of was, okay, let's take some quotes out and post them in the description, because it's really interesting the things that people say when they are in this type of conversation. If you were to extract a chunk of that, or just a sentence or two, and just put it in between quotes, and then juxtapose with other quotes from the other person, it creates an interesting thing, even a little bit. I've thought that we could extract portions of these and which we have done a little bit of these podcasts, and put them into specific topics, for further future release under the heading of a particular topic. But we do tend to weave in and out a lot in within the topic, but then I don't know, Civil War all of a sudden, because we were talking about.
Yeah. And it is that case. Ooh, shiny. Let's off on that direction. Squirrel over here, and it is sometimes my brain is like herding cats, because I've got a million thoughts going out in 15 different directions, and it's trying to keep everything reeled in. I don't always succeed, but it's fun to make the attempt anyway. But yeah, and that would be a lot of work, man, to go back through. I mean, we're recording episode 74 right now. Can you imagine going back through 74 episodes and trying to catalog what we talked about enough to be able to pull quotes out, or even little segments of the discussion?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that would be an arduous task for sure.
I mean,
but what started this, I don't know, for those of you who don't know, for last week's episode, which is the New Year's episode, actually, the unconventional New Year's episode, came out this morning. Eloy, in the description, he pulled a few quotes from our discussions. And I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I didn't know that's what that was. I didn't know if you were writing a new song lyric or what. And then I got looked at it and said, oh, okay, I see what's going on. We pulled certain quotes out of it and included that in the description of the episode. And it was actually very cool.
Yeah.
And it was very cool. So yeah, I like that idea.
Well, see, because people don't get to, unless people sit and listen, folks that are browsing, say, Facebook or whatever, they don't know what's inside the book, or in this case, the podcast.
Right.
And if we were to extract little sayings, it might strike the right chord, or be of interest or of use to someone, passing by through the interwebs. And that might just be the ticket. Because the content inside, all we have to identify is our description, our artwork, which sometimes isn't easily, sort of transcribed from what the content. You can't necessarily create in the art to match specifically the content of a 1.5 hour podcast.
Right.
So all we have is these three sort of ways of description, art, and title to have people understand what's going on. So the quoting was an interesting little thing, and it led me to think, well, I like it. Yeah, I thought it was a cool thing. We might use something similar, or work on that a little bit in the upcoming episodes.
Now, I try to name the episodes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's a few episodes that don't have names, but we can usually pull something out of the discussion and name the episode. Now, the last couple of times you have named the episode as you've set up this little live stream, and I might just keep letting that go. It may have absolutely nothing to do with anything that we talk about, but some of them are actually pretty good. So I don't know. I may make suggestions on changing titles. I may just let them ride. Well, who knows?
Well, this one's called Trampling in the Years. Do you know what the associated theme or where does that originate from?
Oh, it's got to be Steely Dan reeling in the years.
That's 100%. And how about the one previous, which was the night they drove old Lindsay down?
Yeah, the night they drove old Dixie down. Yeah, of course.
So it's like I'm totally thinking in terms of music, you know.
Yeah. Well, we are known for talking a lot about music, so
which
maybe a little bit too much, but
well, guess what?
Guess what?
You might have something. I don't know. Do you want to try that?
Sure, we can go ahead and go for that.
Right.
I've been holding on to this for several weeks now because in a rare case, I actually kind of gave Eloy some advance notice that I wanted to talk about this just to get his idea on it. But we generally speaking, we just throw stuff from out of the blue because I want to get that initial reaction. And what it was back in October, they released the list of nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that's coming up. Now, the way they do it in October, they release a list of, it just depends on the committee. It could be anywhere from 10 nominees to 20, something like that. And this year, in October, they chose 14 nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the nominating committee will all get together and they'll vote and they'll select however many to induct. And they will do the induction in usually March, but not always. It just depends on scheduling. So in October, they released the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I wanted to get your opinion on them.
Okay.
If that sounds cool.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start at the top of the list and we'll just go right down them. If you don't know anything about them, that's cool because there's a lot of them here I don't know about either. We start with Todd Rundgren. He was nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2020.
What did he do?
Have you listened to any of Todd Rundgren's music?
I don't have the associated name with the music.
Okay, he's probably most known for I Don't Want to Work, I Just Want to Bang on the Drum All Day.
And I'd have to listen to the melody of that.
I don't want to work, I just want to bang on me drum all day. Bang.
Nope.
Bang. Really? Okay. He also did Hello, It's Me. I thought about it for a long, long time. Nope. Wow. He I Saw the Light. Let's see. He was also a huge producer, a very successful producer. He produced Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell.
Wow.
He produced Grand Funk's We're an American Band.
Nice.
Skylarking, New York Dolls, Forever Now, Wave. He's done a bunch of producing.
Okay.
He also fronted a band called Utopia. He's been in rock and roll since
the dawn.
Oh boys, well, since the 60s.
Okay.
But he really came to his own in the 70s.
Okay.
Okay, before I jumped into that a little bit too quickly. I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stated to their website, and their mission statement is a big part of it.
Okay.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's mission is to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Learn about our history, building, economic impact, and more. Okay. So it's to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll. And this is what led me to come down this list and see if you agreed with some of these nominations. Because the next one is Kraftwerk.
No idea who they are.
No idea who they are. They're kind of a techno band. Um, they're a big ensemble. They have done. Let's see. They have. Man, it's hard to explain.
Well, we can
It's
skip
more
them.
of a techno, so we'll go ahead and skip
Yeah.
that. The next one, I already know your reaction. The next nominee was T-Rex.
I would 100%, because it's relevant, rock and roll wise. They have to be. I would, yes. They should be inducted.
They
Absolutely.
should be inducted. Okay.
Oh yeah, but without a doubt, they are. That is awesomeness.
Okay. Okay. And it's funny too because T-Rex in the US is mainly known for Bang a Gong, and that's about it.
That's true.
But they were humongous in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So that's one that you do agree with,
Well,
and two you don't really know.
Their first album, with a band, because it's all Mark Bolan.
Right.
Before
And they even say that here. T-Rex is essentially Mark Bolan.
Yeah.
The glam rock progenitor and true rock and roller.
Yeah. I mean, before he used to do like hippie acoustic, and there's some interesting albums, really cool. He's 2 or 3 albums before he did Bang a Gong, which was the album. I forget what the album is called, the first one, but it's the one that's black and gold with the shadow of him and the amplifier stack behind him.
Okay.
That whole album is really, really well put together. So,
yep. Okay, so T-Rex you do agree with.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay. The next nominee is the Doobie Brothers.
I'd say yeah.
I'm kind of two minds because to me Doobie Brothers is one of those bands that has two entities. Or two, not entities, two. The word escapes me.
Yeah, styles or
yeah. There's two
eras.
Yeah, you have the early Tom Johnson era. You know, Long Train Running.
Oh, Blackwater.
Blackwater, yeah. You have oh my gosh, Jesus Is All Right. China Grove.
Yeah, that's good stuff, dude.
And then when Tom Johnson, for health reason, he had to back away from it, Michael McDonald came in and turned the whole thing around to where it became more keyboard based 80s pop. They slowed down, they weren't as brash and in your face.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. To me, that's less about the rock and roll than the Tom Johnson Doobie Brothers was, because they were all about the rock and roll.
I mean, they were a powerful band, and their quality of recording was high end, and they were within the genre, let's say, and they did influence and all that, and they did go through changes. I mean, sure. I'd still give it to, even though it's not like my first choice to go and listen to, let's say, but it's still of that ilk of, you know, rock and rollers.
Yeah. I the older Doobie Brothers, I would agree with you. The newer, I don't know. I think they kind of got weak myself.
I don't know if Chicago is in the Hall of Fame, but I like Chicago pre and post.
Yes. And that's, and the word I was trying to look up, the mystery word of the day, is iteration. That's the word that I was trying to think of. Chicago is another excellent example. When it was Chicago Transit Authority with Terry, oh my God, now I'm going to blank on his name, the guitarist. Oh my God, I can't, Terry Caff. When it was him as kind of the front man, they were a completely different band from Color My World later on, with Peter Cetera setting the tone. Now, Peter Cetera was the vocalist with Terry Cav, but the whole vibe of the band they went to easy listening and soft pop rock.
I like both eras very much.
And they had their moments, I guess, but I don't know.
Everybody needs a little time away. I heard them say.
That, to me, that's not rock and roll, and that's what I'm getting at. And that's why I went back to the mission statement of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame: to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll.
I'm sorry, dude. I'm gonna have to say, see, because there's a difference between the purity of the origin of rock and see, because those songs in the 80s that they did is a tremendous lesson in melody, composition, and there are heavy metal, there's heavy rock guitars.
Understood.
It's within the ballad format, though.
But when your entire repertoire, it seems, that's what it's become, is ballads. You've stepped away from the rock.
No, but they had some faster. Look, there's a stigma associated with it for many people. I personally, I like it, but I understand the stigma.
But they weren't the topic of discussion. The Doobie Brothers were. But yeah, we're with you. Okay, Motorhead.
Yeah, I was never into Motorhead much. I couldn't get past that guy's mold.
Oh,
he had some sort of mold. Yeah. And it was like so annoying, dude. And I hate to say that.
I never really got into their music either. However, I think they should be in the Hall of Fame.
I do.
Because that's the whole purpose. They inspired so many other performers to even think about getting into the business.
I mean, I have a mold here too, somewhere on here. You see it here?
Yeah, I got one over here.
But it's not a big one. But he had this barbaric thing. Oh, yeah. And it was very disconcerting. And it has nothing to do with music, but for some reason it's kind of like the bandana for whatchamacallit. Or Mark
Knopfler, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of that kind of a situation,
So Motorhead, we both agree, should be
I would. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna. Although I wasn't a big consumer of it. Yeah,
but to me, popularity, and that's where I'm kind of taking this, is because how much of these people are really influential versus how many are just popular,
right? Well, but influential. See, here's the problem with influential. Do we mean influential culturally, like dress, gear, or do we mean another musician?
Okay, I misspoke when I said influential. I meant inspiring. To engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll. I shouldn't have used influential, because you're right. I mean, look at Don Johnson with the whole Miami Vice thing that I'm rocking right now, which is 30 years old. Shows you how much of a cultural infidel I am. But it can be influential as far as dress and things like that. But I mean, inspiring other people. I personally think Motorhead should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for that reason.
I mean, they inspired Metallica and others.
Yeah.
And that blew up. And they themselves were hard rockers. And when I say I can't comment too much, because it's not like I went out of my way to purchase any of their records. I was too busy exploring other things to ever get into them.
Right.
So,
and I'm the same way. I never really got into. I've heard a few of their tunes, but I never really got into their music because it wasn't my style. I was on to other things.
Yeah.
So
no blight on them. I'm just saying,
not at all.
Yeah.
It's not my style. You can like somebody and admit they have talent and admit that they are inspiring and influential without actually them being my style of music.
Yeah, exactly.
Case in point, the next nominee is Rufus featuring Chaka Khan.
Was that from that song, Chaka Khan, that one?
That's one of them. Okay. And the other was Tell Me Something Good.
How did that melody go?
Tell me something good.
Oh, okay. They were influential, I guess, very much so.
This begins with the line, Chaka Khan began her long R&B funk fusion career with Rufus in the 70s. That's enough for me right there to say no.
Because it's not rock and roll.
Exactly. It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they are not a rock and roll band. You don't put country bands in, you don't put classical bands
Yeah, but
or orchestras in.
But funk is definitely not necessarily so. I have a big problem because this is a gray area. For instance,
I don't see it as such.
okay, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers are a funk band, but they're actually a fusion funk / rock band. But they do have a funk.
See,
theme.
but there's a difference in a rock band playing a funk beat and taking, I mean, look at Carlos Santana. He doesn't play salsa music, but there's that Latin influence that he shoved into rock that is distinctly Santana sound, but you cannot deny that's rock and roll.
Well, see, I can deny it, not that I can deny it or would want to, but there's an argument to be made that if you think about what they're doing, they're not necessarily doing rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
They're using elements. They're a fusion.
Exactly my point. He took rock and roll and he took that Latin beat, that Latin tempo.
All that's
and
rock and roll.
He threw in the maracas, he threw in the congas and the bongos, and he threw in that little bit of a see, I'm not musical enough to know exactly what I'm talking about, but there's a certain feel to it, but it's added to rock and roll is what I'm getting at.
See,
we could have a pretty good argument if you're talking about Oye Como Va. But
well, that's just lyrically. That's just. But okay, look. Let me just say it. The problem is that the rock and roll in that music, when I listen to it, comes from his lead guitar playing.
Right.
Everything else that supplements the performance is of other.
No, the drums, the bass, the keyboards.
That's all.
The guitar. That's all the rock and roll.
See, I don't see it as that at all.
It's that rhythm section in the background. And I'll tell you what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking about tunes like Smooth and Soul Sacrifice. And like I say, we could have a discussion about this with something like Oye Como Va. Maybe Evil Ways, but I don't think so. I think Evil Ways is still rock and roll. But it does have that little bit of a Latin rhythm in the background.
So look, it's a fusion, but to me, the rhythm section is performing Latin music, and to me,
you're right.
The guitar is the infusion of the rock and roll, and to me, Soul Sacrifice would be an example of the rhythm section because the drums in that situation is more into the rock and roll and stuff. It's just. There are a few. The keyboards are a jazz, but jazz also a lot of people don't realize jazz comes from look, that organ, that organ, that raspy organ, all that's all derived from jazz, and what they're doing, it comes from a jazz part of town, and the jazz that they're doing. So the Latin blends in with the jazz because Latin is nothing more than a derivative of jazz, if not jazz itself. It's a break off of jazz. It just, to me, I listen to it and I get it. I'm with you. It's rock and roll, but I'm fooling myself because if I break it down, it's actually all these other parts.
Okay. But you said it yourself. It is rock and roll, but it's all these other parts.
Yeah, to me, it's rock and roll because I categorize it as such.
I'm with you.
Not.
But I'm looking at Rufus featuring Chaka Khan, and they're flat out saying they're R&B and funk fusion.
Okay.
And to me, that's not rock and roll. It's just my opinion. Now, I like the song, and Chaka Khan has a killer voice. That woman has got some pipes. I'm here to tell you, but it's not rock and roll.
And I'll say one thing about I'll say one thing that'll complicate the situation even worse. So, rock and roll to me, in its purest sense, is Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis,
I'm with you.
Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and those people.
Mhm.
To me, that is rock and roll, and it's rock and roll because it's sped up from the blues, but in reality it's a crazed blues is what it is.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, what we, and I'll include you in this and correct me if I'm wrong, but what we believe and identify as rock and roll is not only that initial rock and roll, but what came in the 60s where they started to warp things but still had that rhythm, but they warped. And then in the 70s they created all these, but it still maintained this sort of
Right. And that went on and on and on. I mean, AC/DC is a rock and roll band.
and Elvis Presley too.
And Elvis Presley, oh yes, the Beatles, they were a rock and roll band
See,
because they flat out would admit they knew they were doing ballads, they were doing experimental music, but then they would come back in with something like Lady Madonna, which you can't deny is a rock and roll song. Even when Paul McCartney, even after the breakup and Paul McCartney went out on his own, he did tunes like High, High, High and Jet and things like that, which are rock and roll tunes.
right. Well,
You
but
know?
they've already merged into a new creature. And if we wanted to be purists about it, we
Right.
would say that rock and roll, because the Beatles departed from the structure of that blues.
Right.
They totally departed. And by the way,
Sure.
rockabilly, for me, rockabilly is within that rock and roll for me
I'm
as
with
well.
you there 100%.
But what came after was such a departure, with the Beatles being the forerunners of that, that if you wanted to be totally honest, is it rock and roll or is it a derivative? Rock and roll to me is that 50s vibe,
Mm-hmm.
but in the greater sense, it's all this that we're talking
Yes,
about.
I agree.
So it's tough to.
My problem though is that trying to include a band who identifies itself as R&B funk fusion,
It doesn't
trying
belong.
yeah, to me it just doesn't belong.
I
That would be like putting Merle Haggard in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay, fine. We'll
If you
eliminate.
Don't
Okay.
Now wait a minute. Merle Haggard is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he was one of the original Crickets. So he's there with Buddy Holly. But
Okay, in that respect.
but you get what I mean. It's be like putting Willie Nelson or Tammy Wynette in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're just not of that genre. Doesn't matter whether we like them or not.
Yeah, I got you. See, but if you do that, it's also super limiting in many ways, because the outskirts of that universe of rock and roll has such variance. It just, by the time you get to the 70s, a lot of these guys. So for instance, would you consider Metallica rock and roll?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, but it's not.
No, it's heavy metal, but
Yeah.
listen to some of their music. You can't take Whiskey in a Jar, which actually is a Celtic classic, it's a standard, and say that isn't rock and roll.
The bulk of their music
No, you're right.
is a departure. Okay, here's the crazy thing.
But now you're talking about a subgenre of rock and roll is what I'm getting at.
Well, no. Well, here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing. If you had to really label Metallica, notwithstanding the heavy guitar and this and that, what it actually is, if you had to sort of draw it into it's actually a form of orchestral or classical music. That's what they're doing.
And that's James Hetfield. And that man is, I don't know. I'm not as heavy into Metallica as a lot of people are. I really am not. I have one of their albums and that's it.
Well, I'm not saying
but
he
is actually a freaking genius for putting that together the way he has, because you're absolutely right.
Well, but I'm not okay. So like, look, so like you'll have, let's say, orchestral music, and you'll have them with the violins going
Right.
dun 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 dun
Right.
dun 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 bum bum dun 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 dun
Right.
that orchestral sort of like symphonic
Right.
movie theater sort of like
Right.
movie soundtrack. Well, they're doing that with just guitars,
Exactly.
lead, and so it's a watered down sort of theme of that, but
But
that's
the
far
arrangement is what I'm talking about.
it's far removed from rock and roll, so much so that you could actually say the same about them that you could about Tammy Wynette is closer to rock and roll than they are in a certain way.
See, I disagree. I disagree. I disagree with you that there. I
I mean,
disagree with that there.
I mean, well, um, if you think about it, I mean, I guess you can disagree if you want because I have nothing to
Well,
say.
yeah, I mean, I know I can, but see, we're identifying what rock and roll is, but we're defining what rock and roll is to us. But we're also losing sight of the fact that somebody who self-identifies as, no, we're not rock and roll. Well, then why are they nominated to the Hall of Fame? That was my point. I mean, we can argue all day long on what our opinion is on whether Rufus featuring Chaka Khan should be inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Simple fact is they're saying themselves, we're not rock and roll, we're R&B and funk. Not
Right.
that they're going to turn down the nomination, because who would? That would be foolish. Well, several people have actually, but I just my opinion. I don't think they should have been even nominated. Now,
It,
it remains to be seen if they're going to be inducted or not, because that announcement has not been made yet. That's later in the year.
if I had to like really define it,
Mhm.
I would have to say that 50s, shuffle sped up
Mhm.
would be the rock and roll.
Yeah.
Um, I would that would be the rock and roll. From the
Okay.
Beatles on, in my opinion, it altered into it's an inspired thing from I believe it's all rock and roll because under the
Mhm.
umbrella. But
Sure.
if I had to be sort of like really picky, I would say that the Beatles were a departure from that extremely. Even though, people don't might not see it that way, it was a big change because you no longer had that cycling 3 bar sort of blues injected
Mhm.
thing. All of a sudden you had all these other elements in it,
Right.
and it no longer held that
Well,
original.
and that's why they dropped one of the reasons why they dropped the name rock and roll, and it became just known as rock, because it was based in rock and roll, but it had morphed so much there was very little, if any, resemblance to rock and roll.
Maybe it should be called the Rock Hall of Fame, the
I
Rock and Rock
did,
and Roll Hall.
that has been proposed several times.
Oh, really?
Yes, and they have even thought about the Music Hall of Fame, because that brings me to my next one. Jim Dockrell pointed out somebody off in the live chat over here on YouTube. Come check out our YouTube channel.
Mhm.
He said that Janet Jackson is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and she is. This year, Whitney Houston is being nominated. Whitney Houston is one of the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, she was R&B and pop.
Mhm.
And in fact, this right here, it's saying, should the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame draw lines?
You mean lines?
There is space there for the most contentious artists in rap, country, and jazz. Some are saying that Richard Pryor should even be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Then, if that's the case, then Trampled Underfoot podcast should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm with you 100% there.
Well, but you know what I'm
But
saying? It's like,
right,
okay, at one point,
right. But when it comes along to someone like Janet Jackson or Whitney Houston, because it's like they say, she came out of soul and R&B traditions, but she was a pop singer. She was not a rock and roll artist. So what do you think of her? We're talking Whitney Houston here. We're talking, what do you think of her nomination to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I think she was incredibly talented, but not
She was.
putting that to the side.
She was. She has probably one of the greatest voices of all time.
I can't say that she's rock and roll at all.
Me either.
I mean, even by the standards of the breakdown into the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on, where things went into crazy areas. You know who I could say that I hate to break into the. You know who I could say that maintained. Here's a cool thing: Guns N' Roses in the 80s, even though they're far removed from that original, I could say that they're rock and roll because it's injected in their chord progressions. Not 100%, but it's close enough that you could still say that's rock and roll, although it's heavy metal.
Right.
They are considered hair metal, heavy metal, and so on.
Right.
But they still have the elements.
But they're still in that rock genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More so than other bands.
Right. But Whitney Houston is not even close and never even attempted to be.
No.
So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that she should be nominated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Neither should Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Because
he's very much a sort of R&B, orchestral too, love song, pop song, funk.
He's an excellent performer and an excellent songwriter, and I've got a couple of his albums.
Oh yeah, I love his.
It's not rock and roll.
Songs in the Key of Life is awesome.
Songs in the Key of Life was one of the first albums of his that I bought, and then I went back and looked at some of his older stuff. But we're talking about a specific genre, and you're going to have to remember to stay within that genre. I think, my opinion, nobody else's, when you start talking about inductees. And that leads me to my overall question. I mean, we've been going on for an hour and 6 minutes now. And rather than making this a marathon session, because there were 14 nominees, and we've not even got to half of them yet. Basically, what I wanted to come down to was this. Is it really about their mission is to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll? Or is it more about popularity now?
I can't answer that question because I'm so not on the pulse of I'm so not on the pulse of what's going on. It should be about that initial source, inspiration, and it should be about the original beginnings, in my opinion.
To engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a bunch of other bands in here. Let's see.
It is with it.
Soundgarden, Depeche Mode, 9 Inch Nails, Notorious B.I.G., MC5, Judas Priest, Thin Lizzy.
MC5, I can tell you automatically yes.
Thin Lizzy, I should think automatically yes too.
Yeah, automatically yes.
Dave Matthews Band, Pat Benatar.
Pat Benatar is pretty within the rock and roll, so I would have to say yes.
Right. But just going down this list of these nominees, I think there are some. I take that back. It wasn't 14. It was 16 amps. 16 acts, not 14. I think that some of them I think would be appropriate. A lot of them I'm not so sure. And so I'm wondering if they're sticking to their declared mission statement to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll, and have more or less swapped it out for the popularity.
Yeah.
In an attempt to bring more people to the physical museum and get some merch sold. Because there are people out there who would never think of going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But now that Janet Jackson and Whitney Houston are there, and Whitney Houston isn't there yet, she's just a nominee, maybe they will go. Because
if you think of, okay, so this is an honest to goodness museum. Mm-hmm. And obviously people still go to the Smithsonian Museum, even though dinosaur bones are X hundreds of thousands of years old. But with rock and roll, you're dealing with a pop of a decade or even a year, in some cases, popularity type thing. And then it's over and the next best thing takes over. So
Mhm.
probably the museum owners or whatever are looking at like, how can we, like you said,
Well,
continue this on, because people that like that, they're dying off. The
well,
original rock and rollers.
that's part of it, but what this goes through their nominating committee, and the committee is not the owners of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The committee, let's see, the voting committee includes critics, publicists, industry weasels, whatever that means, former nominating committee members, and the hall's previous inductees. So all of these people get together and they whittle it down. The voting committee is 1,000 members. So, I mean, you've got everybody in there from members of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Grateful Dead to Cat Stevens and Madonna. They're all on the nominating committee, along with all these other people. There are 1,000 members, and they all nominate who they think should go. And then they take the top however many. So these were the 16 who received the most nominations. And then from those nominations, they will vote on who should be inducted and who shouldn't. So it's not like the owners of the museum are saying, we need to throw Whitney Houston in here to try to get some other, let's break into the R&B crowd. That's the committee, 1,000 different people who don't get together.
You're also dealing with a situation where music
Mhm.
is, and musicians and artists and creative people are more pliable with terms of service, let's say, than
Mhm.
your average. So they're not necessarily interested in the letter of the law.
Yep. And that's where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Is it about staying true to rock and roll, or is it about popularity? I don't know. I guess we can argue this until the cows come home, and quite frankly, we almost have, but that's cool. And that's why I've been saving it up, because I knew this was going to be a long discussion. I mean, I don't know what your attitude is on Soundgarden or Depeche Mode.
Soundgarden was a band that they came about during the grunge era,
Mhm.
although I don't think that they liked the label necessarily, and they became very popular with a couple of songs and they did good. Are they rock and roll? Well, in the context of heavy metal, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would still consider them a rock and roll band, Depeche Mode, I never really listened to them. I always thought
They're more rock and roll of the original sense in many of their songs than a
yeah,
lot of these heavy metal ones. With the guitars that they choose, the rhythms that they use,
mhm,
although they go pop, like the Chicago transition from
right.
one to the, but they would, I would accept them too, because they are pretty much yeah, they are within the context of the greater umbrella of rock and roll for sure.
Now, I wasn't into their music at all, but following with the mission statement of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll, I agree with the nomination of Nine Inch Nails. I wasn't super heavy into their music, but they did inspire. I mean, there are several other performers out there who just absolutely fell in love with Trent Reznor.
Trent Reznor, yeah.
And got into music because of him. So I think he himself ticked all the boxes as far as being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of
If
Fame.
you go with the inspiration side, because what he did was something very different.
Oh, extremely different.
There's no rock and roll. There might be the spirit of rock and roll.
I'm with you there.
But the technicality of the music, it's more like an industrial
Exactly.
sort of breakdown, sort of post-apocalyptic sort of. But he does have the spirit of, because that's the thing. Rock and roll is also. So I think Jim had mentioned that earlier, that there's also the spirit of the music.
Attitude, the attitude. And his question was, is rock and roll a genre or an attitude? And I said yes.
Yeah,
Because I think it's both, you know. But yeah, Nine Inch Nails was more ferocious and industrial.
yeah, yeah.
You know, Notorious B.I.G., not rock and roll. I'll just say it up front, not rock and roll. You know, I mean,
Did you have to?
yeah.
Did you have to? Did you have? Did you have to? Did you have?
There, I said it, and I'm glad.
Did you have to put that face when you said it?
I don't know. I was looking away from my camera, so I don't even know what I did. I'm gonna have to go back.
No, you
at an hour and 15 minutes.
You just said it, and you're like, oh, you know,
Not rock and roll. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean,
it's so obvious. Not.
It's actually pretty binary when we think of it. Is it rock or no?
Yeah,
it's not rock. I'm sorry.
Now that's not to say that. Okay, I'm gonna be fair here.
Mm-hmm.
I just know the name and that there was a shootout one time. That's all I know from that, because I can't look. I can't get past the whole, you know, hoopla of like East Coast, West Coast, we're gonna shoot you down. That whole gangster rap, it kills it for like the whole. I just can't. So to me, it's like a mute point, you know. Yeah. But I mean, I've not heard one track from Biggie Pop.
Notorious B.I.G.
Oh,
and Biggie Smalls. Yeah. Let's see. You already said MC5. They've been nominated 5 times, by the way.
MC5?
Yes, they have been nominated 5 times.
They are totally awesome.
So, Judas Priest, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
Thin Lizzy, no doubt in my mind. You know, Jailbreak, the boys are back in town. And Dave Matthews, not listen to Dave Matthews. I mean, I can't really say that I couldn't name a Dave Matthews song.
Well, I can name one.
Okay, well, you're better than me then, you know. So I have to reserve judgment on that. I don't know.
He's very acoustic and orchestral, and he's got a big group, an ensemble behind him. And in my opinion, he's balanced between sort of like that folk rock with, or it's just,
yeah.
I would have to say that yes, but I wasn't too thrilled about his music personally, but that's not what we're talking about. Right. I would have to say that yes, I guess, but it's I'm up on the fence with that one, dude. I'm up on the fence with that one. I'll retract the yes and just leave it a big question mark.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Okay. And then Pat Benatar.
Yes. I'm gonna go yes.
A little bit of trivia. Her husband, Nick Giraldo.
Yeah.
A little bit of trivia here. Nick Giraldo was the first guitarist to ever be featured on MTV.
Oh, wow.
Her song Shadows of the Night was the second song played on MTV. And the first song was all keyboard. There were no guitars in the first one. The first one was Video Killed the Radio Star.
Oh, wow.
So Pat Benatar was the first rock and roll to be played on MTV. Hey, Nick Giraldo was the first guitarist.
The other night, I thought of you, and I laughed.
Uh-oh.
And I laughed. I watched what's that song? Funky Town.
Lips Inc. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, and I said, oh, I gotta watch this, and I've seen it before, but it's where they do the robot, the ladies.
Okay.
Would you take me to?
I've never seen the video. I don't know. I've heard the song, of course,
and I've never seen the video. I was just sitting here and I was cracking up. You know, I like the song, but I was thinking of what you would think at that moment. I was watching, and I remembered you saying, "Man, disco," and this and that, and I was watching it, and I just cracked up, dude, just thinking like the whole scene that unfolded in front of me, although it's a great song in my opinion, but still.
I have seen some very, very cringy early attempts at music videos, and probably the absolute worst one I have ever seen personally that I managed to sit through was Dobie Gray's Drift Away.
Okay.
Dynamite tune, one of my favorites. Give me the beat, boy,
Okay.
free my soul. I
I've seen
want to
it.
get lost in you. And it's just him out in this park
Yeah.
singing to the camera. And it is so cringy. It's like, Dobie, why you let them do that to you, man? Come on, you're better than this. You deserve so much more. And it was just, but the song is killer. The video was lame as hell.
The song is a killer song, but the video is kind of a little bit. I didn't have too much of a problem or that much of a problem, but yeah, I could see that it's quite dated. And
Yeah.
even back then, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're at
Really.
like some sort of botanical garden.
It's like, dude, what? You are so much better than this. You deserve so much more. Come on, man. You need to fire your manager and get a better one. What's going on here?
You know what band is unique, at least spirit wise, is that I forget the name of the band, but I can tell you the songs. They sing "Psycho Killer." One, Psycho Killer, Talking Heads.
Okay.
The Talking Heads, they have such an interesting, and they're brilliant in the concepts of what they do and stuff. This is from the back in the 80s. They have that spirit of venturing out into this unexplored territory. Great band. I know that they're not being
Okay. Do you think they should be nominated? There you go. There's a good topic. Who should be nominated?
I think
Instead of one of these, who would you take out? Personally, just me talking here.
Big IG. That Big IG should go
and put them in instead. The Talking Heads.
Oh, in a hot minute.
If they're not already in the
in a hot minute, I'll even give it to them twice. Just get that.
One band that I know is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that Ding Dong should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Remove Whitney Houston and put in Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, they were all about the rock and roll, forever. And another one, let me pull out here. Let's take out Rufus with Chaka Khan and put in Rare Earth.
What songs that I know the name?
They did I Just Want to Celebrate. And they did, let's see. I just want to celebrate another day of living. Okay. And they did Get Ready. They did a cover of Get Ready.
People get ready.
No.
Getting ready.
Get ready. Here I come.
Boom. Yeah. From the Temptations.
Yes, from the Temptations. So you see, even that wasn't really rock and roll because that was Motown.
That's right.
But I'm a huge Motown fan.
I like Motown as well, dude. I mean, heck, I'll go back. Like I owned Sam Cooke, and that's prior to
that's pre-Motown.
Yeah, and I owned his album. I just used to love it, dude. I was such a consumer of music when it was hard to. If you decided to get into something or you wanted to explore, you had to invest money in it, and then you had to sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good thing in a way because I don't spend the quality time that I used to. I don't know if it's because of my age. I don't know if it's because of what I'm. But the fact that you can have everything is too much.
I've become a product of the thing that I lamented. If you remember on Trampled Underfoot podcast, episode 2 was the album concept is dead.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of putting on a set of headphones, turning down the lights, throwing on an album and listening to that album, side A, flip it over, side B, that's just gone. And we've become more. We want quick fire. We want now. We want instant gratification. So we jump all around. And I've become one of those as well. I'll listen to a tune by Rare Earth. Then I'll jump over to another tune by Stevie Ray Vaughan. Then I'll jump over to another tune by Martha and the Vandellas. Then I'm into Sam and Dave and then Wilson Pickett. I'm all over the place. Throw in some ZZ Top while I'm at it. And I'm with you. The whole part about I've become that pedestrian listener that I lament so much, in that my attention span is as short as squirrel, and that's about it. I'm on to the next one.
Well, even movies. I don't mean to branch out. Even movies. I used to sit through a movie, and I'd sit there kicking myself, saying, "Boy, I should have picked something else because this sucks." But
Mhm.
I'd watch it through and then scream at the screen when it was over. Like, boy, this was crap. Well, now I'll pause one. I
Mhm.
have another one started. I have
Yep.
two over there. I might be doing email over here, and it's
Yep.
like, what am I enjoying?
Yeah.
And
But I mean,
I can't be pulled away from it either. So
but you're right about that. It has become so easy for us. We're less invested in it. We can go on YouTube and look for something. If we come across something new that we've never heard of that we like, we'll stick with them, and maybe we'll check out more of their stuff. But we're not going down and buying an album that we know we can't return just because we decide we don't like it,
that's right.
and you're stuck with it. You know, I mean, when I went down and I got some Sam and Dave, or I got some Otis Redding or something like that, I knew I was going to like it because I liked those performers. But I've been burned a couple of times too, because, there were albums like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I Love Rock and Roll. To me, that was one of my, another segue into another episode of the Trampled Underfoot podcast. The number escapes me right now. We listed our worst albums. That's why it made it onto my list of worst albums, because there was one song on there that I liked, and the rest was just, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't like it.
It sold a lot of records.
It sold a lot of records on one tune, and she promptly disappeared.
Yeah.
The album just didn't back up that first single, you know. So, well, anyway, all righty. We're sitting at about an hour and a half. I think we pretty much covered that. What do you think?
We don't want to let the year go, man.
We don't, but they're going to be setting off fireworks in your neighborhood.
Oh, we've got in an
soon.
hour. We've got an hour to go.
Yeah.
Whoopee.
Yeah. Well, I don't. So we might just go ahead and hang it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good. We'll catch you guys next year. We operate go live every Tuesday. And that's 9:30 East Coast. Is it 9:30 or did we do 9:30 today?
Yeah, we always do 9:30.
9:30. See, I forgot it. It's 9:30 East Coast time, and that would be
6:30 Pacific. Yeah.
Pacific time. And we do that over here on YouTube. We're over on Spreaker, Spreaker.com, TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com as well to check out past episodes. And we have a Facebook page by the same name. So
you go over to Facebook, look up Trampled Underfoot Podcast. There we are. You won't see our faces, but you will see, well, I don't know. I don't remember what artwork you made up for the Facebook page, but well, anyway, give us a show suggestions, and give us a thumbs up, a like, hit us up on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. We record here, as Eloy said, every Tuesday night, and we just give it a good go. And don't forget our website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, sponsored by Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. For all of your podcast needs, you don't need to look anywhere else than trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
see ya.
Have a good 2020, y'all. Take care.